Okay, so I was browsing the internet recently and I got curious about the topic of the worst movie ever made. And several features come to mind, don't they? The Room, Birdemic, Troll 2.
Oh my god!
But those are the so bad they're good kind of movies. No. The kind of movie I'm thinking of is one that nobody likes, even ironically. And luckily for us, there's an easy way to find out what movies are like that. Rotten Tomatoes. You all know this site. It compiles reviews from every critic and gives the film in question a score, based on the percentage of critics that gave the movie a positive review. So if we can find a film that scored 0%, i.e. no critics liked it, well then we found our winner. Or loser in this instance. The problem though is that tons of films have achieved the dreaded nil point. However, many of these films have only been reviewed by 5, 10, 20 critics each. So these films are bad, they're just not impressively bad. Now there are films on this list that have been reviewed a sizable amount of times, but one film in particular tops this exclusive list. It's the only 0% movie in history with over 100 recorded reviews. 119 in fact. And every single one of these critics say that this movie sucks. And what on earth could be so bad, you may ask? Well, it's this film.
Is that the best you can do?
No, this is.
And yeah, the only reason why anyone has ever heard of this movie is because of this notorious accolade it has. Ballistic, Ecks vs. Sever is an action spy flick that came out in 2002. And very basically, it's about a former secret agent called Sever, played by Lucy Liu, who kidnaps a child, and Agent Ecks, played by Antonio Banderas, is hired to bring him back. So, cause of my sadistic tendencies, and cause I was so ungodly curious as to what could be in this movie that makes it so damn reviled, I sat down and gave it a watch. But once I got to the end credits, I sat still for a bit, and then I was like, really? This is the worst movie ever made? Hell no! Yeah, I mean, it's not good. It is not a good movie. I do understand why critics didn't like it, but for not even one of them to say it was good? 8% of critics liked Catwoman, for fuck's sake. So yeah, this score confuses me. Movies like Son of the Mask, The Love Guru, and even those god-awful spoof movies all at least have a few critics that like them. Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever is an absolute anomaly of a film. So I got curious and decided to do some research on it, looking up tidbits about its production and how the film came about. And I stumbled across a hell of a rabbit hole. And the more I dug, the more I became fascinated by this movie. Cause behind the scenes, there was a massive shit show unfolding down at Ecks vs. Sever's now defunct production studio, Franchise Pictures. And I want to share what I found. So grab a snack and buckle in. This is the tragic tale of the worst reviewed movie ever made. Now this story begins with the film's director. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce to you this guy. He's a filmmaker from Thailand and his name is... okay, thankfully he goes by a much shorter name.
Chaos.
Yeah, seriously, that's what he goes by. Now, Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever was only Kaos's second ever movie. His first one was a 1998 action crime film called Fa, released in his native Thailand. Now, I wanted to check it out, but unfortunately, it's not available anywhere. Hell, there's not even a trailer for it. Even general information on it is scarce. Some sources say it was a box office bomb, some say it was a hit. Regardless, when Kaos moved to the States to further pursue his movie career, he had several VHS tapes produced of Fa, and long story short, when various movie producers watched them, they were impressed, and they gave him the reins to direct his big Hollywood debut. It's just unfortunate that said reins were used to tie his hands behind his back. Yeah, the long and short of this story is that Kaos got screwed. And the more I discovered about this film's production, the more I felt bad for the guy. First of all, the name of the movie. The script that got passed around for this film was just titled Ecks vs. Sever, which Kaos thought sounded like a court drama. And I agree. So when the marketing team asked him what he thought it should instead be called, he suggested Ballistic. as in Bullet, because the Steve McQueen movie of the same name he was a fan of. So now the producers had two titles they could go for, but instead of picking one, they just merged the two together, creating this monstrosity of a title. It's long-winded, it sounds stupid, and it isn't even representative of the plot, as Ecks and Sever here don't actually fight each other all that much. I mean, they do a bit, but it's hardly the main dynamic of the picture. Hell, even the trailer for this movie outright reveals that they team up in the end.
They find that their enemy is the only one they can trust.
Let's finish this.
Though, to be fair, plenty of Versus movies did the same bloody thing in their trailers too. Anyway, another change the studio insisted Kaos make was to the cast. Kaos wanted Ecks and Sever to be played by Chow Yun-fat and Jean Reno. Yeah, the biggest Hong Kong action movie star of the time meets Leon the Professional. That's a combo I didn't know I wanted. But then the studio were like, no. So then they paraded the idea of having Vin Diesel and Sylvester Stallone in the roles. But that fell through after Franchise Pictures and Stallone had a falling out. And why did they fall out? Well, I don't know. But I suspect Stallone may have taken issue with a certain illegal activity that Franchise Pictures were partaking in at the time. But we'll get to that later. Regardless, the producers scrambled and managed to get Antonio Banderas on board, who usually is a good actor, but he looks half asleep in this, and it's sometimes hard to even understand what he's saying.
Looks like he leaked the problem.
Where do you get all these ordnance?
A wind and violence.
Pretty some buzz.
Files, photos, and anything?
Speak up! Quiet, Mum. Well, I can't hear a thing.
And as for Lucy Liu, she wasn't Kaos's idea either. She was actually Banderas's, as he had worked with her before on a film called Play It to the Bone. But Sever, Liu's character, is written as a completely emotionless, deadpan T-1000 style character. So why cast one of the Charlie's Angels in that role? That'd be like casting Jim Carrey to play Agent 47. I mean, a stoic, emotion-free assassin character? That's a Jean Reno role, not a Lucy Liu one. And to add to Kaos's woes, during post-production, the studio decided to fire many of his fellow crew. Like his editor, Caroline Ross. Couldn't find an image of her, but she was one of the editors on Starship Troopers. And then they also fired the film's original composer, Trevor Rabin, who had worked on the soundtracks to many feature films, like Armageddon, Remember the Titans, and Con Air. And to add insult to injury, they effectively fired Kaos too. So he had zero say into what went on in the film's post-production stage. I want to reiterate, the director of the bloody movie had no creative control in the final edit. They just took the footage that he shot and they did whatever they wanted with it. And yet, they still plastered his name all over the movie, parading him off like some kind of sacrificial scapegoat, which, after the film's horrific critical reception, no doubt damaged Kaos's reputation for life. Now, the reason why the studio was meddling so much was likely to do with a film that was pretty damn popular at the time. Yeah, The Matrix was so hot back then, and Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever is soaked in its inspiration, from the outfits to the slow motion to a whole subplot regarding nanobots, which the studio ordered to be put into the script to make the movie more Matrix-like. And to add to all this, remember when they fired Trevor Rabin? Well, if we're gonna rip off The Matrix, who better to compose our movie than Don Davis, the guy who literally composed for The Matrix. Which, hey, that sounds good though, right? Well, no. If you do watch Ecks vs. Sever, you'll immediately notice that Don Davis is not bringing his A game here. Shit! Yeah, the soundtrack to this is so dated. Kaos shot the film more like Heat than The Matrix, so adding an electronic score over it just feels off. And Kaos had no intentions on the film sounding like this. The work of Don Davis and Trevor Rabin are nothing alike. Imagine if they fired John Williams halfway through making Star Wars and replaced him with Fred Durst. Oh, and that's still not the end of the studio meddling. For they then ordered a drastic re-edit of the movie to the point where many shots in the film had to be flipped in order to maintain consistency. consistency.
Whereas when we shot the movie, it was very, very well planned out, very well thought out. Everything made sense.
And poor Kaos, he knew how bad the movie was long before the reviews came out. At the film's premiere, he apparently waited a full 30 minutes before he could muster up the courage to take his seat, and then he spent the rest of the evening hyperventilating the whole time.
My career's over. My career's over.
Then there's the writing, and there's just so much fluff here. To start, let's delve into the plot a bit deeper. The kidnapped child's mother, called Vin, played by Katana herself, Talisa Soto, is X's ex-wife. X's ex-wife. Try saying that 3 times fast. X's ex-wife, X's ex... Now she believes X is dead, as her new husband, Gant, faked his death. But to add to this, X also believes Vin is dead, as Gant faked her death at the same goddamn time. Ow, my head. And then there's a half-assed subplot of Sever being a former employee of Gant, and he killed her kid apparently. Yeah, they really gloss over that. Oh, and Ray Park works for Gant too. Yeah, Darth Maul himself plays an agent who used to work alongside Sever, which could have led to an interesting rivalry, but they go nowhere with it. Then there's the whole nanobot thing, and then it also turns out the kid X is trying to save is like a reverse Billie Jean situation, because he's actually his son and not Gant's. For a 90-minute movie, it's needlessly complicated. And Kaos knew this, as he originally wanted the film to be just a simple revenge story, a la John Wick. Gant kills Sever's family, she wants revenge. That's all you needed. You didn't need all this nanobot bullshit. Which, by the way, makes no sense. These nanobots are hyped up to be a super secretive, untraceable method of killing a person. So, no shooting required. But how do you actually infect the host with the nanobot? By shooting them! And there's scenes that Kaos shot for this movie that would have helped out the plot, but the studio just got rid of them. Like, notice how when we first meet Ecks, he's tending to a head wound?
What happened to your head? That haircut.
Yeah, so that's never explained. But Kaos had opening scenes planned for both Ecks and Sever to set things up a bit better. Ecks had a scene in a warehouse where he ends up getting beat up, as he offers to take a beating for another guy. This would have helped better demonstrate the rut he's in and how he doesn't value his own life, and would have been a far more interesting introduction to him, as it would have revealed a key aspect of his character. And Sever had an opening scene with her in a temple lighting candles and making origamis in honor of her deceased child, which would have helped better flesh out that Sever Gant plotline I mentioned earlier. But instead, the studio was like, nah, let's just open the movie with a few shots of cars driving on roads, because that's far more interesting. And that whole origami thing? Let's not bother explain that. I mean, I know we end the fucking movie with Sever giving one to Ecks, but who cares about its significance? We cut these scenes out, we get to go home earlier. So yeah, the film's a mess, because the script is terrible, and over-eager movie producers were all flaunting their figurative cocks out in Kaos's now vacant editing booth. But remember when I said how this is in no way the worst movie ever made? Yeah, that's because I see promise here. Look, I've talked at length about the awful pre- and post-production stages of this movie, but what didn't appear to be a disaster was principal photography. Yeah, I mean, I am an outsider looking in here, but whilst on set, Kaos seems to have been left alone finally to make his damn movie. And it's here the talents of the cast and crew shine through. To start, Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever is a pretty decently shot movie, I think. The cinematography is courtesy of one Julio Macat, who worked on a bunch of stuff. Home Alone, Miracle on 34th Street, The Nutty Professor. Admittedly, it's a bit weird you'd choose a guy known for his work on family-friendly comedies to shoot a spy action movie, but hey, he does a good job. Check out the moody and mysterious lighting at night. Check out the silhouettes work in this shot. Check out the camera work in the action scenes, which thankfully isn't plagued with any crappy shaky cam bullshit. Oh, and speaking of the action scenes, quite frankly, I'm blown away by them. There's such a big emphasis on practical effects here, and the kind of stuff they were able to do on set. Man, for the worst movie ever made, apparently, I'm impressed. The explosions are pretty sweet.
Well done! Best part of the show so far!
Encore! car crashes are dope.
Like a glove?
And the stunt work is brilliant. For one, the stunt team I use sparingly, because Antonio Banderas and Lucy Liu are doing a lot of their own stunts here. And if you watch behind the scenes interviews with them, they seem to have put in an admirable amount of effort to try and make something good here.
The training that was done for this movie was a lot more intensive actually than Charlie's Angels for me because it went on for about 3.5 months.
In fact, there's several moments in this film that astound me. You got this scene where Ecks takes his foot off a mine, and this sets off a series of explosions which he has to run through. And look, not only is this done 100% practically, this is actually Antonio Banderas performing here. Worst movie of all time? Go f yourself. In fact, I believe this stunt caused Banderas to suffer from minor burns. Look, slow the footage down, you can actually see this happening. Damn, Antonio, way to take one for the team.
If I get hurt in my face and things, I'm gonna be ready for Phantom of the Opera, I guess.
And you can't discount Ray Park, because whilst his fight scene is poorly edited, he does at least get to show off some cool Darth Maul style flips. And major props to the unappreciated stunt team. Like, check out this stunt by Banderas' double, Lauro Chartrand del Valle. Definitely butchered that. And this is done for real. What you see is what actually happened. Okay, so the edit there was hot garbage, what with the obvious speed ramping and the over-excessive cutting, but the stunt itself is incredible. Look, it's this shot that impresses me most. Lauro has to fall right on his mark, and those very real 2-ton cars have to land over him. Lauro did an interview about this stunt recently, and I'm in awe.
The timing had to be so perfect, otherwise I'd have been a bug on a windshield and being scraped off the pavement.
Yep, I literally risked my life for the worst rated film of all time. Now, I could be wrong, but I think it's Chartrand that also does the stunt in this scene. Sever shoots a rocket at a prison bus, which causes it to flip. Ecks then clambers onto its side, he fires a grenade launcher on his back, on top of the moving bus, all while it's hurtling towards another vehicle. I mean, come on. The fact that there's no stunt category at the Oscars is bullshit. These guys put their life on the line for our entertainment. They need more recognition. Oh, and I haven't even talked about the film's most impressive stunt yet. Watch this. That's legitimately one of the most amazing stunts I've ever seen in a movie. And when Kaos talks about this stunt in the behind the scenes, it makes you appreciate it even more.
Usually on the accelerators and stuff, the guy usually stops just before he hits the car and then the explosion happens. And my request was, is it possible to build something where it's an actual car out of some sort of material where we can actually drop the guy straight down without slowing him down? And they did it.
Oh, and the guy you see performing this stunt? Did you know that that is Spider-Man? Yeah, I'm not f***ing with you. Let me explain. So, this guy playing the sniper is stuntman extraordinaire Scott Lever, and in the mid-80s, he was hired by Marvel themselves to play Spider-Man at public events, in commercials, and in a bunch of promotional images, including this one which was used as the front cover of Amazing Spider-Man number 262. And then, movie director Joseph Zito was set to create a new feature-length Spider-Man movie, and this guy was gonna play Peter Parker, much like he already did, just now it'd be in a movie. Well, it was going to be Lever or another guy. Who was the other guy in contention to play Spidey? What the f***? Now, the film ended up getting canned after its production studio, Cannon Films, decided to redirect its budget to funding Masters of the Universe and Superman 4 instead. Brilliant decision there, guys. But trust me, Lever didn't need the work, because he was a very busy stuntman, doubling for Jason in Power Rangers, Superman in the Lois and Clark show, and even for Carrie Elways in Robin Hood Men in Tights. However, Scott Lever eventually did get to play Spider-Man on screen alongside the X-Men. Well, kind of. Lever worked as a stunt coordinator on the first X-Men movie, and in one take, he decided to don his Spidey suit and prank the cast in this hilarious blooper.
I am completely in the wrong movie. I am so sorry.
Oh, and to make you fall in love with this guy even more, after a friend of his tragically died after doing a dangerous stunt, Lever sets out to design a new type of airbag to make falling stunts safer for the person performing them. And in 2006, he won a Science and Technical Oscar for it. Yeah, a Science and Technical Oscar. F that. This guy deserves a Lifetime Achievement Award. Who knows how many lives he's saved with this thing. So all in all, thanks to the incredible talents of the crew, principal photography for Ecks vs. Sever sounds like it was a triumph. Kaos loved the experience.
I had a great time. I had a fantastic crew, the best crew I could have hoped for my first movie in Hollywood.
And I've seen many interviews of the rest of the cast and crew, and they all talk about the good time they had on set and the camaraderie they had, with many praising Kaos's work ethic.
Very proud of my director, and I feel good working with him.
Listen to Lucy Liu here. Her admiration for Kaos comes across as very genuine.
I love working with Kaos. I mean, I can't talk about him without laughing because he makes me laugh. He's the most relaxed director I've ever worked with in my entire life.
I mean, look, he must have been doing something right to elicit that kind of reaction. Oh, and by the way, Kaos was only 27 years old when he directed this. That is really young by movie director standards. Now, look, I'm not saying that this movie would have become a critical darling had Franchise Pictures not screwed Kaos over, but come on. It literally couldn't have gotten worse. And it makes me wish Kaos could get his hands on the original footage to give us a director's cut so he can show us the film he was trying to make. Because all this amazing stunt work and action set pieces are hampered by what the producers did to the footage in post. Look, Franchise Pictures are the villains here, which I know sounds a little dramatic, but there's a reason why Franchise Pictures doesn't exist anymore. Because the guy that ran the company, he was a little bit dodgy. And that man's name is Eli Samaha. My god, to say this guy is controversial would be putting it mildly. Samaha is a Lebanese-American movie producer and businessman. And to this guy's credit, he's a master of networking. The kind of dude who knows people that know people who can get shit done. And he did this by first starting up a chain of dry cleaners in Hollywood called Celebrity Cleaners, with his major clients being big Hollywood productions with a shitload of costumes they had to clean. And with the money he made from this, he became the co-owner of Grauman's Chinese Theatre. Yeah, you've no doubt seen footage of this building, it's very famous. And in the 90s, Samaha bought a nightclub on the Sunset Strip called the Roxbury. Yeah, that Roxbury. Now, the Roxbury doesn't exist anymore, but it was the place to be in the 90s and 2000s. Hollywood MVPs flocked to Samaha's club, and he would often chat with them in order to negotiate distribution deals for their movies. And Samaha had a specialty. He was the man to go to if you had a big passion project that other Hollywood producers wouldn't fund. The kind of projects your average Hollywood Joe wouldn't touch with a 10-foot barge pole. And, ooh, what's that? All of a sudden, John Travolta's ears perk up. Yep, Danny Zuko himself met with Samaha back in the late 90s to discuss possible funding for a certain science fiction project he was really passionate about. Yeah, willing to bet a lot of you have figured out what this movie ended up becoming.
While you were still learning how to spell your name. I was being trained to conquer galaxies.
Yep, much like Ecks vs. Sever, Battlefield Earth was another Franchise Pictures production, and Samaha was more than happy to give it the green light, for this wasn't his first rodeo, nor would it be his last. Samaha's go-to strategy was to find scripts nobody in Hollywood wanted to adapt. He'd then buy it on the cheap, he'd pay the actor nothing, because hey, it's their pet project after all. He'd negotiate with foreign investors to acquire funding, and then he'd shoot the film up in Canada, because thanks to tax incentives, it's cheaper that way. Samaha did this with a bunch of movies, including Ecks vs. Sever, which was shot in Vancouver. Although originally it was going to be filmed in Bangkok, which I suppose is why Kaos was chosen to direct, as he's Thai. But then they decided to move the production to Canada, no doubt done so they could save money on taxes. But that's not the reason given. Yeah, apparently the real reason production was moved to Canada was because of 9/11, and it was done for safety reasons?
Bullshit! Bullshit!
Okay, we need to be safer after those planes got hijacked, so we're going to Canada. Uh-huh, and how are you gonna get there? Well, we're gonna have to take a plane. Oh shit. You did it to save tax, guys, come on. Now, this whole filming strategy was done with tons of Franchise Pictures productions, with Samaha's biggest success story being Bruce Willis's pet project, The Whole Nine Yards, which grossed over $100 million at the box office. However, this was pretty much the only Franchise Pictures production that was able to turn a profit. Literally everything else Samaha touched tanked. And look, Samaha acquired massive budgets for these films, but Franchise Pictures took that money and released bomb after bomb after bomb with it. But wait a minute then, if his movies keep bombing, who the hell keeps funding them? Who on earth thinks it's a good idea to keep giving this man money? Well, the money's country of origin explains everything. For the budgets of Franchise Pictures productions were all funded by good old Deutschland. Yeah, so Germany used to have a bit of a tax loophole when it came to investing in movie productions. Now, I'm sure you'd all love for me to talk in depth about early 2000s German tax law, but I will have to decline. But here's what you need to know. Very basically, German investors only had to pay taxes on returns that the movie made. Any investment they made was 100% tax deductible, including loans they took out for investment purposes to boot. So investing in movies was pretty much a risk-free endeavor for German finances, because if the movie bombed, they'd just get a tax write-off. Hence why Samaha convinced them to fund so many. And if this tax scheme sounds familiar to you, it's cause Uwe Boll did the same goddamn thing. He too had German investors set up tax shelter funds to make his movies, and then he filmed them up in Canada to save even more money. And the reason why you don't hear much from Uwe Boll anymore is because the German government finally caught wind of this loophole and put a stop to it in 2006. But Samaha, like Uwe Boll, took full advantage while he could. And not only was he able to acquire money, he was able to acquire a shitload of money. Like, way more than he needed to. Yeah, so, get this. If you take into account today's inflation, Battlefield Earth's production budget came out to a whopping $136 million. Really? I don't know about that. I mean, look, the effects are bad, it feels quite low scale, it was shot by a man with one arm. Owen Travolta, your biggest star, he did the movie for free, remember? This cost $136 million? Look, that is how much the latest Godzilla and Kong movie cost to make. No way, I do not buy this for a second. And you know who else was skeptical? The German investor Samaha got the money from. So what do? They take him to court. Yep, in 2004, the German investment group Entertainment AG sued Samaha and Franchise Pictures after they suspected they were over-reporting their budgets. And Entertainment AG were correct, they were. Going back to Battlefield Earth, its unadjusted for inflation production budget was reported as $75 million, but it was discovered that the actual budget was only $44 million. And apparently Samaha did the same thing for 9 other Franchise Pictures productions, including The Whole Nine Yards, The Pledge, 3,000 Miles to Graceland, and, get Carter, and Driven. Yeah, those last two are Stallone's movies, and this is my theory as to why he had a falling out with franchise, cause this guy was literally stealing money from his film's budgets.
He's gonna be doing 2 more movies for us behind the 2 he's finishing right now.
That's brilliant.
Wow, did you see what I just saw there? Let's rewind that.
He's gonna be doing 2 more movies for us behind the 2 he's finishing right now.
That's brilliant.
Yeah, Stallone did not do 2 more movies with franchise. He only did 1 more. Samaha's lying. To me, it seems like Samaha is trying to pressure Stallone into announcing a partnership to the press that he hasn't agreed to yet, and Stallone's having none of it. Watch again and pay attention to Stallone this time. Notice how he shakes his head when Samaha says he's doing more films with them, and how he interrupts him in order to change the subject.
He's gonna be doing 2 more movies for us behind the 2 he's finishing right now.
That's brilliant. Working with him is like working, when I came here.
That is a dodgy relationship right there. What I would give to be a fly on the wall when the camera's out rolling. Damn. So yeah, whether it was the whole fraud thing that caused their falling out was mostly irrelevant in the end, as it was reported that Franchise Pictures stole a cool $75 million from Entertainment AG and were successfully sued for it, with the plaintiff being awarded $121 million in damages. And cause of this, Franchise Pictures was forced to declare bankruptcy.
I'm ruined!
And look, this was not the end for Samaha. His wife, Tia Carrera, of True Lies and Wayne's World fame, decided to divorce him around this time. Probably because of the whole fraud thing, but who's to say?
If you don't get along with your ex-wife, you just get divorced and write them a nice check and they leave you alone.
God bless America? Samaha then got into trouble with his own lawyers, as he just straight up wasn't paying them. So they ordered for his home to be raided, and apparently they made off with 1,600 bottles of wine. That is a man who has too much money. Then, years later, he arranged a deal to fund a gay nightclub with reality TV star Lisa Vanderpump. The issue though is that he initially promised to fund it with 2 other guys, and that led to the shit hitting the fan, though 9 years later, Vanderpump decided to close the nightclub after Samaha apparently jacked up her monthly rent costs to a reported $62,500.
A month?
A month. And then in 2018, he got accused of diverting money from more of his investors, which he used to fund his movie theater, instead of his nightclub like he was supposed to do.
He's at it again!
Stop lending this man money, you assholes! So I think this all demonstrates the many backdoor shenanigans that were going on at the time of Ballistic's release. And look, I need to be clear about this. I do not know if Samaha pocketed funds for Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever as well, as Entertainment AG did not fund that movie. However, it just so happens that another German company did, Commerzbank, which raised $133 million to produce 2 films, Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever and the Michael Douglas starring The In-Laws. Both box office disasters. And Commerzbank were set to fund more Franchise Pictures productions, including a Richard Gere movie called Emperor Zender, about a real-life penguin photographer who died in a snowstorm. But rumors were starting to surface about those sweet German tax laws getting changed, so Commerzbank decided, you know what? I think it's best we fund some more promising productions from now on. Now, this is pure speculation because there's a weird discrepancy I found that I want to mention. You see, Ecks vs. Sever's production budget is reported as $70 million. The wiki page says that, IMDb says that, many articles report that figure. However, in this interview that Kaos did with a YouTuber called John Ward, I'll link this video in the description, great interview, Kaos is pretty adamant that the actual budget of Ecks vs. Sever was only $35 million.
It's not 70. It's 35 million, 16 below the line. I was a producer on it. I know the exact numbers. I still have the files.
So where did this 70 million figure come from? It's almost like they're over-reporting their budgets or something. Oh, wait. Yeah, I'm going into full-on conspiracy mode here. But maybe Samaha did get $70 million for Ballistic, but lied to Kaos and told him he only got $35 million, and then Samaha pocketed the other $35? Look, I'm not accusing anyone of anything here. All I'm saying is, well, He did it before.
He can do it again.
Like, does Kaos even know that the guy that produced his first Hollywood feature scammed his investors for $75 million? Remember, Kaos was a young, inexperienced filmmaker at the time. He likely had no idea what was going on. But who's to say? Maybe Kaos is right and it really did cost $35 million. And Samaha's deal with Commerzbank was 100% above board. Commerzbank, unlike Entertainment AG, never took franchise pictures to court. So again, who's to say? I'm not accusing anyone of anything here. All I'm saying is that Commerzbank, you might want to double check your records just to be safe. Now, to divert a bit, I did also want to mention one rather overlooked aspect of Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever. It's 3 tie-in video games. Yeah, 3. 3 games, all based on the worst reviewed movie of all time. How the hell did that happen? It's funny because the movie tie-in game is all but dead these days. But in the 2000s, everything got a video game. And I mean everything. It was like an alternative Rule 34. If it existed, it had a game. Now, when I say 3, I really mean 2, because the PS2 and Xbox version, which was going to be developed by Zombie Studios, the guys behind the Spec Ops series, got cancelled. Probably because, you know. But the 2 that did get released were both first-person shooters released on the Game Boy Advance. And what's weird is that they weren't half bad. Unlike the movie it was based on, they actually got pretty good reviews, believe it or not, with IGN giving one of them an 8.4 and the other a 9. Though if you are wondering if you should play them today, you don't. They're first-person shooters on a console with 2-faced buttons and no analog sticks. Acceptable for the time, an absolute abomination by today's standards. I played them myself, and it was telling that my highlight of my playthrough was listening to the title screen music, which, to be fair, is a friggin' bop. They're still commendable for pushing the GBA to its limits. Now, I've talked a lot about Kaos in this video. And if you're wondering, hey, is he actually this brilliant, underrated talent that Hollywood didn't give a chance to? Well, Kaos did direct the Tekken movie, which honestly, I think is a little overhated. I think it's actually alright. Hello? Oh, he actually directed the even worse prequel movie. Oh god. Okay, I think a lot of you have now already made up your mind about this guy, but there's something you don't know. Kaos read the script to Kazuya's Revenge and did not like it, but being a filmmaker based in Thailand, he can't afford to be picky with what scripts he takes, so he agreed to do it, on the proviso that they didn't attach his name to it, and they signed the contract and everything to agree to this. But then the movie came out and yeah. So Kaos, understandably pissed, calls up the producers and is like, yo, what the hell? We agreed we were going to keep my name off of this. And how does the producer choose to respond to this?
So his response to me was, well, come sue me.
Wow. What a dickhead. So now Kaos has 2 stinkers to his name, neither of which was his fault. So I guess that would explain why Kaos decided to then write his own movies, on top of directing them. So, knowing that, I was like, alright then Kaos, now you have full creative control with no Hollywood bigwigs breathing down your neck. Show me what you got. So I checked out his most recent Mark Dacascos starring feature, One Night in Bangkok, and I went in expecting one thing, but got another. Because if you go by what IMDb says about this movie, it would appear that it's about a hitman who hails a taxi and has the driver take them around the city performing assassinations. And I was like, But then I watched it and realised it's similar to Collateral, but it's not quite the same. For one, the IMDb page is lying. Dacascos doesn't play a professional hitman, he's just a regular dude seeking revenge on those that killed his family in a drunk driving incident, so he does go in a different direction. So comparisons aside, is the movie any good? Now that no one is screwing Kaos over, can he make a decent flick? Well, One Night in Bangkok is better. It's a step in the right direction for him, and there's some stuff in this film that genuinely works. In the end, I can't call it a good movie though. Ugh, I was rooting for it, but there's several aspects here that irk me. For one, it's poorly paced. Like, the first 7 whole minutes of this movie has no dialogue. 7 minutes go by before anything actually happens. I mean, I can't believe I'm making this comparison, but you know that long-winded opening to Birdemic with the guy in his car driving for what seems like an eternity? That was about 5 minutes. Look, Kaos, I know you want to set the scene and everything, but come on! Look, establishing shots are important, but you don't need 7 minutes of them. So, not a great first impression, but the film does get better. Though everything the film does well is mired by something. Some of the acting is good. Some of it is bad. Some of the cinematography is nice. Other times it's awful. And as for the film's major twist on the collateral formula, it's actually really good, but it's revealed in a pretty underwhelming way. You see, instead of them showing the effective twist, they just tell us it in a passing piece of dialogue. As a result, it didn't hit as hard as it should have done. Oh, and for a feature starring an established and talented martial artist, there's not much in the way of actual fighting in it, and what few fight scenes we do get are terrible. Oh, come on. I could come up with better choreography than this. It's weird, because with Kaos's other films, his fight scenes are actually pretty good. That's even the same actor that Dacascos is fighting. And Dacascos himself, of course, can fight, so I don't know what happened here. I guess you could argue that Kaos wanted to make a film a bit rougher and more realistic, but come on, it's the Iron Chef America guy. Beer! I mean, give us something a little flashier. I mean, it's not a terrible movie. I like the actress that played the taxi driver, who, by the way, had never acted in a film before, which is very impressive. And I think her and Dacascos have good chemistry and an interesting evolving relationship. The dynamic these two have is the best part of this movie, and it helps differentiate it from Collateral, because their relationship is nothing like Cruz and Fox's. So yeah, One Night in Bangkok has some good stuff, but it's not enough. As the film is let down by some uneven performances, it's not that entertaining, and there's some weird directing choices, including a scene which they keep cutting to, which reminded me a lot of the Wheatfield scene in Gladiator. Yeah, they do something kind of similar here, and it didn't work for me. Yeah, I can't call Kaos a good filmmaker quite yet. I mean, what a great twist that would have been for this video. The guy who made the worst reviewed movie of all time is actually amazing. He's not, but he is way better than this score would suggest. I think Kaos has it in him to make something good. I mean, maybe his movies could be better if he had my help. It is clear that his recent flicks are low-budget affairs, so you gotta give him a bit of leeway for that. If everything fell into place for him, like if he had the budget and the talented crew of Ballistic, but the freedom in the edit he has with his Thai productions, and also a good script to work with, I feel then he could make something good. As of the time of making this video, Kaos is in post-production for a new movie called Bang. And you'll never guess in a million years who's gonna be in it.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.
And upon hearing this, I was like, how on earth did you manage to get Peter Weller? But then I looked at Weller's IMDb page and came across... Okay. Apparently getting RoboCop to cameo in your project isn't nearly as impressive as it sounds. F***ing irate gamer.
Now that's a name I've not heard in a long time. A long time.
But who knows, maybe Bang will be good. In fact, I'm rooting for it to be good. Kaos clearly isn't Steven Spielberg, but given what he's gone through, I can't help but respect him. Cause even with the worst rated movie ever made, his talents were able to shine through to make Ballistic somewhat watchable. I mean, it's bad, but it does not deserve 0%. No way. Something honestly should be done about that. Hey, Wait a minute. I'm a critic. I have a decent-ish following. Look, some YouTubers qualify for Rotten Tomatoes. See, look right here. There's Chris Stuckman. Alright, here's my Rotten Tomatoes review for Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever. 6 out of 10, which is the lowest certified fresh rating I can give it. Your move, Rotten Tomatoes. I want to officially be the 120th critic who has reviewed Ballistic Ecks vs. Sever on your site. And I say it's good. Enough. At least to get to 1%. It deserves at least that. Hashtag 1% for Ecks vs. Sever. Make it happen, Rotten Tomatoes. Hey guys, thanks for watching. Much love to my Patreon supporters. If you'd like to join my Patreon too, you can get in on various perks I offer. You can join for as little as $1. Links in the description if you're interested. Also, if you're new, consider checking out this below video right here, which the algorithm thinks you'll like. If you enjoyed the video, please like, comment, and subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Peace.